Good to go?
We are good to go.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to our Teton County Library Board meeting. We do have a quorum present. Peter Stalker joining by phone, Grace Robertson, Nina Lenz, and Dale Barber, and myself, Mark Hendrickson. First order of business is to approve the agenda. I would like a motion, please.
So moved.
I'll make a motion.
I can second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. The first order of business today is the executive session for a personnel matter. And as a result, we're going to, I'll make a motion to do that. Before I do, I'm going to warn everybody that's not on the selection committee that you'll be dismissed from the meeting. And then once we conclude that meeting, you can come back in for the regular board meeting of the library. Okay, so I am going to make a motion to move into executive session to discuss a personnel matter in accordance with Wyoming Statute 16-405. Do I have a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
I just want to let everybody know that all we're doing today in our executive session is discussing which candidates would move forward for an interview, a first interview.
Thank you, Nina.
Yeah.
All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Let's move into executive session. Thank you.
Oh, look, that worked. I'm so proud of myself. Oh. Okay, you are back in public meeting. We're back to being recorded, and I've let everybody in was waiting in the waiting room.
Great, thank you, Deb. As Deb just mentioned, we came out of executive session, and I'd like to turn it over to Nina, please, to describe what we did.
So just very quickly, I'm happy to report that there was consensus around the candidates that we would like to bring in for an interview. We are going to move forward quickly to make this process happen, and that we will share more specifics as we are coming forward. But at this time, we need to keep a lot of this close to the chest in an effort to protect our candidates and our process. And the next meeting that we will have on this will be to discuss the questions that we would like to ask and the format for interviewing. And I would ask all the committee members to send any types of questions or discussion or thoughts about what questions should be asked to me, Maureen, and Julianne, so that we can get those prepared for the next session, and we can have as much done before the meeting.
Nina, let's move on to public comment. Do we have public comment today? Hearing none. Deb, we did have the public comment related to the waiving the fines. Has it been 45 days? Has that run its full course yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay.
We still have, I forget exactly how many days, but I'm keeping a spreadsheet of all of the comments, and I'll have a summary for you at the May board meeting. So that's when we'll actually open a public hearing on this matter, and then the board will be able to act on it as it wishes.
Okay, thank you, Deb.
May I ask a question on that briefly? Deb, how do you think that we're getting a good response? I know you've probably got a lot more experience in this than us, but Are we seeing a good response, a good coverage of the demographics and inputs? I personally have really enjoyed, and I've learned a lot by reading the comments that have come in, but could you just quickly assess, are we accomplishing what was intended here?
You know, from emails, I can't tell anything about people from their email addresses. So all I have are email addresses. So when you ask about, does it cover the demographics? I have no ability to dig into that kind of data. The only data that I have is, is what people say. And I categorize their comments broadly with a little summary of what they have to say and whether they're in favor of it, whether they're opposed to it, or whether they're neutral on it. And that's simply my judgment about how I read, their comments. I think we've received just over 20 so far. It's been interesting. I think the last time we had this type of interest, as I looked back at some of the other things that had, the public notice about changes in policies, a lot of times there was no public comment. People didn't have a feeling one way or the other. I do remember when we had the potential change in a policy around charging for out-of-state library cards. I think we received in excess of 100 public comments. And it kind of fell about the same way this is falling, which is, some were in favor, some were opposed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Deb. Moving on to the correspondence report. Do we have anything today? Nothing on the...
Nothing more than what you already had in your packet.
Okay, great. Let's move on to the approval of the minutes, please. First up is the Teton County Library minutes of the meeting of March 18th, 2021. Are there any comments, corrections, additions that we should be making? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve?
I'll move it.
Peter, second, please.
Second.
Okay. Further comment? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion unanimously carries. Next, we have the special board meeting minutes of the meeting of March 25th, 2021. Again, comments, corrections, insertions? Hearing none, I move to approve these minutes. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, thank you. Further discussion? All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion unanimously carries. Thank you. Let's move on to the consent agenda, which is basically the financial discussion. Peter?
Well, it's Deb's report is the financial narrative and the financial documents. Deb, do you want to go through your narrative?
Actually, the financial narrative is not mine.
Well, it's a staff report right there. I
recently delegated that to the administrative services manager, Stella Terrasas. I think it's appropriate since that duty falls in her responsibilities for her to do that. And I think it's a good way of transitioning some duties in preparation for the next director. So I think what we did note were a couple of things. One, we just noted a new process to clear out those checks that people haven't cashed for whatever reason. And the county has a similar process. So we're simply following the lead on the county in terms of taking those off the books for now, unless somebody comes back. They have 5 years to come back and request payment on something, but it allows us a cleaner process for our accountant and for auditor in terms of what's on our books. The other thing that we note is, and I have not dug in to determine exactly who and when, and I don't need to don't think we need to do that, but we received a notice from the Internal Revenue Service related to our June 2020 941 report. And if you remember, that was somewhere in the thick of the passage of the Families First Coronavirus Relief Act, trying to get all those words in there. And it hadn't yet settled in terms of who was eligible and not eligible to defer the employer taxes. And at the time, the library decided to defer some of that. And when the rules came out, it was determined that government entities were not eligible for that. I did double check that rule, but bottom line is you get a bill from the IRS and you pay it. And these are for, the employer share of Medicare and Social Security. So this isn't right. Like a new tax. This is, it was a choice to defer it. They chose to defer it. We're not eligible to do that. Now we have to pay it.
Yeah, I was going to bring this up during the voucher session, but I may not make that because of my plane travel. But it's a little over a $12,000 item, of which there was a bit like $200 in round numbers, $200 in interest and a very small penalty on it. But it was something that we owed last year, but we didn't know about it until the rules came out, so we just paid it just now.
Okay. Thank you, Peter.
Other than that, my review of the financial documents, the balance sheets, the TCLF reimbursements, et cetera, are just fine. Does anybody from the board have a question about any of the financial?
Go ahead, Grace.
I have a question briefly. It's from the narrative. And I see that we got over $22,000 in CARES Act payments for some of the special things we did for the COVID. Was that what we requested, or how did that compare to what we requested?
That was exactly what we requested.
Thank you.
Peter, I know we're about ready to lose you. Do you have any comments on the vouchers while we have you on the phone? Sorry to move ahead.
No, that's fine. Other than what I was going to speak about on the Social Security section, is it 931? I can't remember what the number is. I don't have it in front of me, but that we just talked about. The other thing I would do is compliment staff and Deb for finding a very efficient way. We have an art exhibit in the entrance to the library that had to be decommissioned, and we did it in an incredibly efficient, cost-wise, and effective way by using in-house staff who agreed to do it on their, for compensation on their off time. But instead of it being a $10,000 to $12,000 decommission, I think it was done for around $2,000, and that was great. So I have no other comments on the vouchers. They were just fine.
Okay, thank you, Peter. Safe travels to you when you leave.
Right. Well, let me make a motion to approve the March 2021 financial narrative and documents. How's that?
I second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Motion unanimously carries. Thank you all. Director's report.
Well, I mean, you see, I'm talking about a variety of things that are happening in the library. Peter already mentioned the decommissioning of Filament Mine. And as I said, it's kind of a bittersweet moment. I was there at the beginning and there at the end. We did note that we were hoping to be able to recycle some of those materials. What we discovered when we actually started taking down the fiber optic cables was that between heat, the effect of heat and light over the last 8 years is they basically crumbled in staff's hand as they were taking them down. So unfortunately, there is really no way to recycle those. We're still determining what, if anything, we're able to do with the illuminators, but again, we'll follow the whole county disposal process in that. And I think we may just leave the post that's there. I think we may just leave it there. The same with the categories that are up on the wall. And I think that's a decision for the next director and boards at some point down the road to determine if the library wishes to have another guard and what that, but I think that's a little bit down the road. And meanwhile, actually the categories look quite nice and they're very library because it's all the Dewey Decimal System. So, and the post looks like it's holding up the ceiling. So there we are. I would note, and so just I've noted a couple of staff, departure of Laura Langberg, to join her husband, hiring of 2 part-time library assistants. I would also note the youth services manager position. This filling this position has been problematic. We had a candidate we all agreed on. We were, preparing to make an offer, and she withdrew because of the housing situation. And so, as painful as this is, I think the strategy at this point is to wait until the next shoulder season, just in advance of the next shoulder season, to advertise this. So to advertise this right now, at the crux of the housing situation, kind of doesn't make any sense to me. I did talk with Beth Holmes, who is the interim, and she's agreed to continue as interim youth services manager. Yeah, I'm sad to report this. And I also just let you all know that Kevin Adam, our facility coordinator, is going to retire in July. So, his supervisor Stella and I will be talking about the recruitment process to fill that position. So,
thank you.
Thanks. The staff report regarding the expansion of services, the LFAs. Please.
Right. So, last time when I brought this to you, and thank you for kind of pushing us to keep looking at how we do this. And what I find interesting is each time we look at it, the community is a little bit further along in being vaccinated. Staff is a little bit further along in being vaccinated, if that's their choice and they're able to do it. Is that we all feel a little bit more comfortable about our ability to continue to expand services. So I think sort of like the county, we're all waiting a bit to see what happens with spring break and if there's any renewed surge in cases as a result of travel from spring break. I think we're going to know that here. I think they've indicated that probably around, here in about another week, we'll really see whether that's the case or not. I'm not sure they're going to move out of orange this week, just because of the hospitalization percentage. But all we're doing is we're trying to get ourselves past that when those potential surges are, so that we can have what I would call a smooth transition for patrons in terms of expansion of services. So that's really why, instead of just jumping right on to allowing people to be here for a longer time without first allowing more people in here. Because if we think about it, if we allow people to be in here for a longer time, but say only 10 people can be in the youth wing, so then for 3 hours, a whole lot of people are being blocked from being able to come in. So what we'd like to do is to be able to allow more people in. And we are seeing a gradual increase in foot traffic, in the library, I think, as you saw from the statistics. So it just keeps mounting a bit. So the hope is that sometime here in May, that we will be moving into this allowing 3-hour blocks of people being able to be in the library. We have not yet figured out a time when we might go back to have the whole library be open, say on Sundays, and the rest of the hours that it's, were reduced. And the big reason for that at this point is we are not fully staffed. You know, while we've been in this reduction, we've held off on filling those positions because it didn't make any good fiscal sense to fill positions when we didn't have a complete amount of work for people to do. But we are in a gradual rehiring in anticipation, hopefully in summertime, especially as people can be outside, that we'll keep adding our staff on and be able to return to those, the full complement of hours. So almost there. Not quite.
Did you have your hand up?
I just had a
okay,
question.
Please.
Deb, I'm a little fuzzy about, and I get that you don't want to be bouncing all over the place because that is confusing for the public. But if we, after 3 consecutive weeks, it said we would increase the numbers of people allowed. And then after 6 consecutive weeks, we would increase the amount of time. And I'm just wondering why that wouldn't be concurrent.
You know, this is, again, I think this is an evolving situation. So, I mean, we may feel differently in another 3 weeks. And, you know, when the board adopted the county's COVID safe, you know, protocols, you know, it gave staff broad latitude to sort of figure out how do we want to adjust within that. So again, we might feel differently about this in another 3 weeks. This is how we felt about it when we talked about it here. I mean, I know my report is for this meeting, but the last time the management team talked about it was at the end of March. So every week means, like I said, more people get vaccinated, more staff get vaccinated. We have better information about how this might occur. So we may go that route. It's just this was our comfort level when we discussed this 2 weeks ago.
Okay.
Questions of Deb?
I think everybody knows where I lie on this, but I will reiterate. I guess I feel like the way the system is now, you could have up to 50 people be able to have access during an hour based on how long, you know, one person goes in for a minute, one person comes out, another person can go in. So we figured out a way to sort of increase the numbers while keeping total numbers low. So to me, what I have heard from community members is what they're really looking for is a way to be in the library longer. And I hear you, Deb. I think it's a good point that that you don't want 10 people sitting in there for 3 hours, but we could make it so that 5 people could be in there for 3 hours and 5 other people could come and go. I mean, I could make an argument that the youth wing numbers should be higher, given that what we found is that children are less of a concern than we thought they were. I mean, I think K-5 has been open for our schools longer, and they have seen really no in-school transmission. That most of the transmission among children has been in sports or other areas outside of schools. But I won't get into that. I'll just try and stay focused. And so my 2 big concerns are expanding the amount of time, and then we're not open on, there's no mention here of being open further on the weekends. And I absolutely understand that we may not have the staff to do that, but at some point I just wonder if we could prioritize being open for a full day on Saturday or Sunday, and maybe deprioritize a Monday or another day of the week that's less used by people. I know not everybody works a 9-to-5 schedule, but schools are in Monday through Friday. There's just a lot. It feels like we're not giving equal weight to people who might need a weekend as over to the weekday. So those are my concerns.
Nina, as a point of reference, when you said you've heard from the community, is that 5, 10, 20? What do you think that is?
I don't know. I mean, when I talk to people about the library, that's sort of the consistent message that I get. So 10, 20. And then I do believe there have been some comments from, I know Deb has said it in the past in a meeting that people do want access to meeting rooms. And I believe, I think public health, I was in a meeting yesterday, public health reported about 40% of the population now is fully vaccinated. 66% of seniors are fully vaccinated. So we're making progress. And I think we need to be ready to really, you know, come back. And we want to encourage people back into this building, right? I mean, it's such an amazing place. And such a, given, we just talked about housing, and I just know from some experience on with other volunteer boards that like there are people living 6, 7, 8 to a house. Like to be able to come into the library and have a quiet space is something that's really important for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Dale.
I don't think any of us disagree with wanting to get the library open. And I am fully confident that the people that are at the head of the line in this are our staff, and that they are doing and thinking in every way they possibly can to do this in the best, safest manner for everyone. We have, I think, the concern about the spring break possibility is a real one. And I think that alone is probably a good enough reason to give our staff a chance to assess on the ground exactly what's going on when. And we do have a plan. And as Deb said, as you go along, a lot of times you realize, hey, this is working so well that we can really speed up the process. And I realize we're all impatient, but I think at this point, a slight pause is probably in order, and I have full confidence that our staff is going to do it just as quickly as they possibly can, safely, because I know that they want it to be open as much as any of us, probably more.
Well, I don't disagree with any of that. I mean, we're talking about opening. This is in yellow, which we are not even in at this moment. No, what I'm saying for yellow is that I don't see any thoughts about the weekend, and that's not to say that they haven't occurred. It's just not in front of me. So, and for me, if, you know, I would like to see the priority be given to longer hours as opposed to having more numbers. And maybe that's my, you know, I like to be in places that have less people. That makes me, you know, for some people, like, you can stay longer if you're not sitting right next to someone. So like, why not increase the hours while keeping the numbers low and see what that feels like? Because we've had numbers, we've had people be able to come and go at different rates.
Nina, it's not really apples. We're not really comparing the same things when you say more people and more hours. It's like apples and blue. Okay, so more people, so having more people in the building during our existing hours doesn't necessarily require more staff.
Right.
Okay? As soon as we open more hours, we have to have more staff. So that's why we're just not there yet. Like, we're in the works. I mean, we've talked about this and we're in the works, and it's more than just the hours, you know, as we start to approach summer and kids out of school, and the number of, you know, so it's a number of actual library staff available, hired, and ready to do the job.
Do you need more staff to have longer periods of, so you still have, I think the number is 25 right now. So you still have 25 that can go into the library. 10 of those people could have a special card that lets them stay for 3 hours. Does that require more staff?
So that was one of the options that was discussed, because there are libraries that do this. So now we're in a situation of patrolling the building, and people who have less time and more time, now we're having to boot people out, you know, and basically play traffic cop with people who are only allowed to be in there for an hour. So you know, I mean, adult services and the whole management team did talk about this concept of sort of this, in some libraries, they give people a colored sticker, you know, and here's how, but they actually they hired security to deal with that, rather than have their library staff have to deal with that kind of interaction with patrons. So, which is why we just went with it. Just here's a block of time, come in, be in here as long as you want. You know, if you need an hour, be in here for an hour and then leave. If you need to be in here for 2 hours, be in here, come in, you know, if you don't need to come in until 10:45 or 9:50, you know, whatever, come in and self-regulate. But, you know, at noon, it's gonna be the end of that session, kind of thing. So it felt like the best option where staff didn't have to play traffic cop with patrons, which we would much rather be answering their reference questions, helping them on computers, than managing their stickers or bookmarks or whatever we use. But I hear I get what you're saying. And I know, I mean, like, cause we see it and hear it all the time here at the library, and I get that. And I think, you know, as Dale said, I mean, this continues to be an evolving situation, and we keep looking at it, you know, and we'll continue to look at it because, you know, in 2 more weeks, you know, say there's been nothing that happened as a result of spring break. We may all just go, you know, and like you said, and vaccination rates go up and staff feels more comfortable. You know, so the goal is having it be safe for everybody, not just for vaccinated people, but for everybody.
Okay, I'll make one more pitch. What if the people who stayed longer had to be in the meeting room, like in their little study with their mask on? And I'll leave it alone. I mean, it wouldn't be me to try and push. Like I think people would think I had taken ill if I wasn't pushing on this issue. But so that's my last suggestion is perhaps the people who do want to stay longer are in the meeting room. They're easily identified as people who are going to stay longer. You know, it's clear what the rules are to be in that meeting room. And we start, or you, that's not me, because I'm not there doing this, very aware of that, you know, start just 9 to noon if they want to come in. And maybe nobody comes in and the point's moot and I'm out of order. Just a thought. I'll stop.
Well, let's do this.
Feel free to keep pushing.
You know, I think we all unanimously want to go where you're going, and I do agree with Dale that I think Deb and staff will make the right decisions. We'll keep talking about this, and hopefully, at some point, make much more progress in getting more people in the library. But for now, let's let Deb consider your last pitch, and we'll keep discussing this as we move forward. Fair enough? Okay. Thank you all for the discussion. I would like to say that yesterday, Deb and I and Grace met with Amy Stair and Pauline and Kelly Bass, and forgive me, I can't remember. Lori, yes, Lori. And we had what we call a tribe board meeting, which hadn't occurred for, I think, 3 years. Is that everybody's last recollection of this? And my personal opinion, it was very positive. We shared what we, the library board, are doing and how we're thinking about things. They were able to share with us. We came to an agreement to make much more formal than we have had in the past, how we're going to interact with each other. And Grace, I'd like to, if you would just have a minute to talk about where we're headed there, and then we can move on.
Okay. Mark, could I just encompass that in the board governance item below?
Sure, that's fine.
I'd like to just integrate it in there. it encompasses what we agreed to in the meeting.
Yeah. Anyway, it was a very positive meeting. Kelly said to us that they have 3 new board members and they're trying to acclimate those board members. And so not much has happened as it relates to what they would report to us. And Amy and Pauline were updating us on a study that they're doing about how other library boards with foundations and friends boards, how they interact, how they structure themselves. And that report should be done sometime in I think the near future. So again, I think it was very, very positive. I was very happy when I left that meeting. That's my own personal opinion. Okay, let's move on then to board governance.
I think I have really not much to report on the foundation, just FYI, I don't think I've ever highlighted though that they did make the move. Their emails and servers were separated from the county, and they've become a separate entity and do have different emails, just so that everybody knows that. I do think they get forwarded at this point because I have made that mistake myself. But we haven't had a meeting since the last time. So the report that Pauline put together is comprehensive and thorough as usual. I don't know if the friends have anything, Dale.
I do have a short report if that's appropriate.
Absolutely, go ahead, please.
The Friends meeting was on March 24th, and the big good news is they have 3 new board members, Bob Wemple, Susan Dong, and Michael Adler. And everyone was excited and pleased about that. The Book Nook activities are ongoing, still in a kind of a modified manner, but it's still there and people are still able to take advantage of it. Vita is going until May 1st, and correct me if I get off on this, Grace, to help people because of the extension of the ability to file your taxes that was done. And the Friends are also continuing to explore options to recognize volunteers, which has been more difficult since we don't see as many of them and don't have as many active volunteers. And they're also exploring new projects that we can still do given the difficulties of the pandemic, which we're certainly not done with yet. So they are looking forward and working on all of this on a regular basis. And we're lucky to have such a great group.
Mm-hmm. I agree with that. Thank you, Dale. Okay, board governance. Would you take the lead on this, please, Grace?
Okay. I'd like to begin with just a brief review of what we're doing and why. We as a board agreed that we want to and can do better. And one aspect of that is having interactions and communications that lead to a Teton County Library Board set of governance items. This is guidance for us and hopefully guidance for our new participants, as we'll have a new board member coming on in July, and we hope to have a new director coming on. So this guidance, having it documented, we believe has a lot of benefits to both the board and future participants. After we evaluated our board needs to do better, where do we need to do better? And that was based on much input that we got over the last 6 months. And if you're a resident of Jackson, you've seen a lot of that in the papers and coverage. We developed a list of items that need to be addressed to help us do better in the form of policies, procedures, agreements. And that's the governance. Then we prioritized and organized that list. which resulted in 3 areas for us to address initially. These were our most important, we felt, to have in place as soon as possible. The first of those 3 areas is how the board internally and our workings can be better. The second is how our relationships with the Board of County Commissioners can be better. And the third is how our relationships with the foundation and friends can be better. So we're looking at a governance package addressing those 3 areas initially, and we have specific items under each of those. Our approach to doing this has been a flow down from existing good best practices. And that includes a flow down from our Wyoming State Library Board Handbook, where many of these reside, a little bit from the statutes. We've looked at the work that has been done by other boards and entities similar, and included in that was a Laramie school district, had a particularly comprehensive set of governance items that we've used as part of our flow down. And in addition, we've gone to ideas from what the Board of County Commissioners in Teton County has used. And we've been flowing all of those into our particular items and then trying to develop details beyond that. So that's what we're trying to accomplish in an overview. And today specifically, would like to start talking about some really good progress that we've made in 2 of the relationship areas. So we have 2 relationships that we're working on: the Board of County Commissioners relationship and the relationships with the foundation and friends. With respect to the Board of County Commissioner relationships, our chair, Mark, and the Board of County Commissioners chair, Natalie Amaker, have communicated. I believe the final one of those communications was the end of March. And they were able to define most of the details for both the BOCC relationship and our performance relationship items. Both of those are involve the Board of County Commissioners. In our packet documents, I've put a little bit more specifics. Under the BOCC relationship, you'll see that we have detailed their specifics. But when you look at the 2 BOCC items together, what it boils down to is that there will be quarterly meetings with the Board of County Commissioners. And the logistics of that are that those meetings will be part of the monthly voucher meeting agenda item. It will be a quarterly agenda item with the Board of County Commissioners. Of those quarterly meetings, 3 of those will be the Teton County Library Board presenting our operations and initiatives in general, what's going on in the last quarter, and in particular, giving the Board of County Commissioners an opportunity to ask questions. So those will be the routine ongoing meetings. That's a very high level of what is going to happen in 3 of the 4 quarterly meetings. In the 4th quarterly meeting, which will probably fall in the September timeframe, we'll have to figure out the specifics of the dates, but the performance meeting, which is a requirement by the statutes that the Teton County Library Board, that boards provide performance data to the county commissioners and the Wyoming State Library. And so 1 meeting a year is where we will do that. And that will likely again be in September. And there it will be reporting on the fiscal, the statistics, the initiatives, et cetera. And that fits well with the fact that our library board has an ongoing July agenda item to review all the statistics for the library. And we will have finished our financials in July, or the 1st of July. So that will feed into this performance meeting, which the first one will be in September, and we'll go from there. So other than putting a few details together and cleaning up the specific pages of policy, agreement, whatever, I think these might fall in the category of being agreements with the Board of County Commissioners. We're pretty well along on that. And I would like to thank Mark for doing his assigned job and getting this communication going and getting us started on that. We don't want to make these complex. We want to keep it simple. We want to keep it useful. And we want to be able to have it adapt as things progress. So we've got a good starting point on 2 of our items, which is our Board of County Commissioner relationship items. And so those will be cleaned up and circulated for everyone's review and approval one last time. The next item is a fallout of what Mark was talking about earlier, our tri-board meeting. And that comes back to our relationship with the library board and our foundation and friends. So we're talking about that relationship agreement. And our meeting yesterday got us off to a good start on that. We agreed on the need for it unanimously and the key concepts of the meeting. It was agreed that we would keep it the executive group that met yesterday. And it was also agreed that we would like to expand it to address our liaisons to the board. And as Mark mentioned, Pauline has been doing some work with that and finding some precedences and standards, and both, I think, ALA and county, Teton County definitions in some of those arenas. And so it will be great that Pauline is going to work with us, which I'll tell you about in a minute, to bring this all together. But we expanded the relationship with the tri-boards to include the liaison roles and looking at them and including them in the document. Some other suggestions that came out of the meeting were that we consider this to be a process that we're going to evolve. These relationships evolve as needs evolve and as players evolve. And that we will do our best to keep it a living document that's readily adapted as we need, as we go along. That was one consideration. And another one was, as I already mentioned from Pauline, that we look at the ALA standards and the Teton County standards for addressing liaisons. So out of that meeting, we had good consensus on where we want to go with it. And we agreed that the 3 people that will carry further development of this forward will be representatives from all 3 of us. Pauline Towers-Dykeman will represent the foundation. Lori Clark-Erickson will represent the Friends, and I will represent the board. And we will proceed to develop this detail. And I found it just very encouraging that bringing this all together and talking about specifics and bringing in more best practices and information to it is going to really benefit us in this arena and keep our relationship with the boards both healthy and well communicated. So are there any questions or inputs for that before I go on to our third item, which is also in this arena? So my assessment is we've made great progress in both the BOCC and the board's relationships, and we're moving right along.
Questions for Grace?
I would just like to say, I brought this forth, and Grace, you've really taken it to the next level. So thank you for doing all this work. I appreciate it, and I want to note that for everyone to know that you have really taken the lead on this. And you are, as always, have given it your great attention to detail and process. And I appreciate that immensely, given my lack of time to spend. So thank you for that.
Thank you, Dina. Okay, so the third area that we're ready to talk about today is our internal board workings. And a key aspect of that is how we work together. And in support of that, we have flowed down from many sources and ended up with a consolidated, well, fairly consolidated, list of items that reflect on how we communicate and interact. And we're calling this our Communications and Interaction Agreement. And personally, I think it's come together pretty well. Just to make sure that everyone has a flavor for what this contains, I'd like to just quickly go through a few items there. This agreement begins with assuming positive intentionality, focus on exchange of ideas, conducting a fair and collaborative debate, strive for consensus, debate ideas, not individuals, listen to each person who speaks and respect all points of view, be brief, honest, and clear when expressing ideas, thoughts, and concerns, sharing any knowledge or expertise. And so we have, oh gosh, I haven't counted them up. We have about 20 items.
21, Grace.
21, thank you. 21 items. And so those are how we conduct ourselves, how we have effective meetings, how we interact constructively. Those are the concepts that are contained in this agreement. And today, we would like to see, I'm seeking approval of this agreement, and we're pulling it aside and trying to get it put down and established. And so we'd like signatures for this agreement as a standalone agreement, although it eventually folds into our policies. And yeah. I see Dale has an input. Dale.
Yeah, I'd like to suggest that we not deal with this item until Peter is able to be a part of the discussion, as this directly impacts the board. I think it's very important that we're all present for this.
Dale, Peter has commented on every single version of this, and we've incorporated all of his comments, and he has had good input to it. I know he's in agreement, but he's been inputting all along, and he's very much aware of it. So,
and I do understand that. However, I think it's very important that he's part of the discussion.
Okay, do you have any other comments? We'll take that into account, Dale. Do you have any other thoughts you'd like to share?
I do. In terms of the part that Grace just read, I'm looking at, my copy is dated 4/13/21. Mm-hmm. Just to be sure I'm on the same page with everyone else. I actually think the one kind of down in the middle should not be in this document. It says, when possible, ask questions, raise concerns with board staff in advance of meetings. And the reason I think that should come out is because I think it gives the wrong impression of what's going on before the meeting. I mean, all of this questions and concerns should be taking place in the public meetings. So that I think that's a confusing addition to this set of actions or desired actions, and should come out.
Dale, and if we put in for discussion in the public meeting, following that, would that satisfy you?
Is I mean, I guess I read that as when possible, don't surprise your colleagues with some opposing view. As Grace, was that the intention of that, or am I reading too much into it? And not to say that you wouldn't bring that up at the meeting, but to be as forthcoming as of what your concerns are, so that someone could either prepare or not feel caught off guard.
Nina,
that's already in there.
Yeah, right above that is the do not surprise.
Oh, well, yeah, so maybe it comes out.
Actually, I see your point, Dale, and I think we've covered the concept above it. And I agree with it giving the wrong impression. So I would be happy to take that out.
Okay. I think that's fine. But I do think, I mean, I try to do that with Deb too. So that would go beyond, or the director too, to not, as an example, I talked about, you know, an interest on weekends, so that Deb was prepared for that before this meeting. So this is a board agreement, and so perhaps that scope overreaches, but anyway.
Okay, Dale, you had another question.
Actually, I'd like to, I think the work done, Grace has done a lot of work on this, which is perfectly obvious. And I think the county commission board work and the Friends and Foundation work is very important and probably needed to be a little more organized than we've had in the past. I do feel that this communications and interactions agreement, it's not necessary, because I feel that all of these items that are included in this list are already available for this board and have been. They're in our handbook, they're in the statutes. The state library has a number of publications and information pieces on these kinds of things. We have had access to all of this information, and it, I think, is rightfully assumed that we would be taking advantage of it as board members. So I don't see that generating another set of the same thing, basically, it's necessarily going to make any difference than it has already. So I don't really feel that this part is appropriate.
Dale, do you think it does any damage for us to have collected these concepts? And by the way, it's not entirely accurate that all of this is in the documents that you mentioned. Some of this came from the county commissioners. Our county commissioners have, since I think for the last 5 years, have had an agreement consistent with this. They document and sign off on an agreement annually, I think. But part of the flow down for this came from what the county commissioners agree is a good approach to operating. And a lot of this document actually came out of the county commissioners, not out of the handbook, not out of the statutes, but out of the county commissioners. But is there any harm in having an agreement like this? And personally, I appreciate reading through it, reminding me, and I find it good guidance. And I don't see where there's any detriment. Why not do it? Are we creating any problems with documenting this?
I actually think it's confusing. I also think our first frame of reference as a library board should be the state statutes and our state library when in doubt. And I also would like to mention that we do, as a board, sign an agreement when we become board members that, again, outlines some of these things that have been included in this agreement. I don't have any confidence in this agreement, quite frankly. And like I say, I think the information that we need and that we should be, you know, holding ourselves to is already out there. And perhaps rather than generating more paperwork, it is more important to try to model working together as a group, and take a more active approach.
Grace, do you have a rebuttal?
I like the guidance. I like it being in one place. I like having, this actually came from 5 different places. And I personally don't have the time and energy to go to all those places all the time. I respect the flow down. I use the handbook as much as I can. But this is for me, a more effective way to be reminded, and it's got some great concepts in it. So I appreciate that it does exist in some other places. It's just very hard to go to all those places all the time to remember. This is a list that I can look at before every board meeting, before every interaction, and just remind myself of how to behave appropriately. And I have no problem signing up to it. So that's my input. Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
Well, I too like the fact that it's all one spot, and you know, Dale, I don't think I've ever been asked to sign anything as a library board member. I could be mistaken. I don't recall that happening.
Mm-hmm. I did, and I think the rest. I bet you did, Mark.
Okay, I could be mistaken. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can check. But there is a form that we do sign, and I do have it in the handbook that I signed it, and okay. I think most of us do.
Good. Yeah. Okay, thanks.
And there is a little overlap, as Dale says. One of those items is in here from that, and I just like having it all in one place. So
I don't believe our current county commission board has an agreement like this. I think they've done it in the past, and definitely we used some of their agreements to model this agreement. So just to be clear, the spirit of this is that we would all be in agreement on it. So, if I guess I would be reluctant to move it forward, forcing it goes against the spirit of the agreement to sort of force someone to sign this. So I will say that, I don't know, Dale, if there's a place where we could get you to be comfortable on your own to have a document like this. To me, I think what my comments would just reiterate that my goal here in sort of bringing this to the committee to consider was to say, while we may have been given documents that we have all read, that we have all taken in differently, that we have all interpreted in our own way, that we choose to retain or forget based on our bias or our thoughts at the time, or whether we were distracted or for whatever reason, that we have a one-page document that says, of all of that information, the stacks and stacks that you have gotten, this is a one-page document that says, this is how we agree to treat each other and to behave in a meeting, in all of our meetings. And I thought it could be a nice way for us to come together and say, this is how we want to move forward. And perhaps it is redundant, and perhaps it is not necessary, but I thought it could be something that would get us all into the same place and have a spirit of working together and moving forward. That being said, if you don't want to do it, then I think then we shouldn't move it forward, because I'm not here to force anyone to sign something they don't want to.
I do believe that, and it's an old cliche that actions speak louder than words. And for me personally, at this time, in this context, I don't believe this agreement is worth the paper it's written on. And for me personally, it would be a dishonest act to approve it.
Okay. Well, I think we've gotten everybody's opinion. Nina, would you make a motion, then we can have a vote?
I'm not going to make them. I mean, I'm not going to move.
Okay.
I want to add this is not intended to be forced on anyone. Dale, I don't know why you think it would be dishonest for you to sign that you'd like to work this way together with us, and you'd like us to work that way with you. That really bothers me. So
I guess at this point,
I can't continue to advocate for something that
I think at this point we would just, the document is there and we can keep discussing it, and perhaps the mood changes. I think a lot of work has gone, and I'm not ready to get rid of this yet, but I think at this point action should not be taken.
I agree. Okay. So can we just move on?
We'll move on then. Thank you for the discussion. The next item on the agenda is the payment of library vouchers. And I think we all heard Peter mention that he is in favor of and has reviewed the vouchers. So I would like to make a motion to approve the payment of the vouchers. Is there a second?
Second.
Further discussion?
I reckon, Deb, there's still credit cards with old employees' names attached to them. Is that just a naming convention in your QuickBooks, or is that there really are credit cards with old employees' names out there?
So that was last month. So I think we finally got the last of them off. Okay. So it's been a process as we discover which ones, because some of it is automated bill payment stuff.
Every time we lose an employee, some bill comes back. I understand how complicated it can be, but it is fiduciarily, it's a concern. So
no, they've all been canceled. They've all been closed. And our intention actually is there's one last bill that's on my credit card, and we're trying to move it auto payment off of my credit card so that I can close my account down in May, so that it's closed before I leave. So we're in the process of doing some heavy cleanup there.
Okay, I moved. Nina second. Nina had a comment. Further comments? All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Thank you. That concludes the meeting today. Thank you all for attending, and thank you all for your great comments. Have a great day. Thank you.
Do we need a motion to adjourn, Mark?
I make a motion that we adjourn the meeting.
Okay.
Thank you, Grace. I second.
Further discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody.